On September 8, 2004, Jay Orbin was celebrating his 45th birthday. It seemed he had everything one could dream of: a successful business that occupied most of his time, a wonderful family, and enough money to provide his loved ones with a decent life. Jay lived in Phoenix, Arizona, together with his wife Marjorie and their long-awaited 8-year-old son Noah. Due to the nature of his business, which involved selling art and jewelry, the man often had to travel to different states for work. But in an instant, their seemingly perfect life was shattered. Jay disappeared without a trace. From their very first meeting, Jay realized that things wouldn't be easy with Marjorie. The young people met at a strip club in Las Vegas that Jay liked to frequent and where Marjorie danced. Enchanted by her beauty, the young man fell in love immediately and soon began ordering private dances from her almost every night. But Jay wanted more than just dances. He had real feelings for Marjorie and sought a relationship with her. Eventually, after a long courtship and demonstrating his best qualities, kindness, wit, and sincerity, the girl agreed to date him. However, Marjorie had no intention of giving up her job for Jay's sake. She craved popularity, fame, and money, dreaming of having the whole world at her feet. So the girl continued to dance, despite Jay's displeasure. At that time, he was only 26, just starting out on his path to success and not yet able to boast great wealth. So after some time, Marjorie decided to divorce him, seeing no prospects in their relationship. The girl returned to Florida, where she had lived before. There she met millionaire Michael Peter, the owner of a network of the best strip clubs worldwide. It seemed this man could afford anything he wanted, and it was he who attracted Marjorie's attention. She managed to charm Michael, and soon a romantic relationship began between them. The couple even got engaged. But over time, it turned out that the millionaire's life included quite a few other young and beautiful girls to whom he also promised a bright future. Upon learning this, Marjorie was deeply disappointed, realizing she didn't stand a chance. The girl tried several more times to arrange her personal life while performing at local clubs, but to no avail. She already had 7 marriages and divorces under her belt. Disillusioned with Florida, Marjorie decided to return to Las Vegas, where she had started her dancing career. This happened in 1993. Unexpectedly, she received a call from Jay Orbin, who had been unable to forget the girl all these years and had been tirelessly searching for her. By that time, he had already managed to start his own business, which he was actively developing. One day, while passing through Vegas, Jay saw an advertising poster with Marjorie's photo and was overjoyed to have finally found her. The girl was surprised by his call but at the same time touched that Jay had waited for her for so long. The man invited her out for a drink, and she agreed. Marjorie and Jay's meeting took place at a bar. They drank and talked about life all night, trying to make up for lost time. Jay was in Las Vegas only in transit. The next day he had to return to Phoenix on business. So the lovers parted again, but continued to keep in touch, calling each other almost daily. As soon as Jay had free time, he would come to Vegas, and he and Marjorie would enjoy each other's company. Gradually their romance grew into something more, and eventually the couple decided to get married. The ceremony took place in a small white wedding chapel. For Marjorie, it was her 8th marriage. After the wedding, with her husband's agreement, Marjorie decided to leave dancing in her turbulent past behind for good and devote herself to family life in Jay's home in Phoenix. She became an ordinary housewife, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the house while her husband was at work. The couple desperately dreamed of adding to their family, but as it turned out, Marjorie had fertility issues. Back at the age of 18, a doctor had told her that she would not be able to have children. The girl underwent infertility treatment, which cost a crazy amount of money. Fortunately, by that time Jay was already earning a decent income and spared no expense on his wife or their future long-awaited child. In the end, their efforts were not in vain, the treatment worked, and Marjorie became pregnant. The couple named their son Noah. It seemed their family life was perfect. Jay and Marjorie were immensely happy and devoted all their time to raising the boy. Marjorie adored her roles as homemaker, wife and mother. On August 26, 2004, the Orbins threw a lavish celebration for Noah's 8th birthday, inviting friends and relatives. A few days after the party, Jay went on a business trip to Florida, but was forced to return early due to Hurricane Francis, which made travel too dangerous. On September 7, 2004, Jay's birthday, while he was on his way home, his mother, Joan Orbin, called to congratulate her son. Jay promised to call her back later that evening when he got home and was going to celebrate. The woman eagerly awaited his call to wish her son a happy birthday in person, but it never came. This was extremely strange and not at all like Jay. In the days that followed, his mother tried in vain to reach her son. She lived in another city. All the calls were intercepted by her daughter-in-law Marjorie, assuring that everything was fine, it's just that her husband was very busy with work and couldn't find the time to talk to his mother. A week passed and Jay still hadn't made contact. His mother realized something was wrong. Despite Marjorie's assurances that there was nothing to worry about, she claimed Jay had simply gone on another business trip and therefore couldn't call. But this did nothing to reassure the mother. Previously, even when Jay was away, he always found time to call his mother. Moreover, this time she hadn't even had a chance to properly wish him a happy birthday, which was so important to him. But the woman decided to wait a little longer. When another week had passed, the worried mother convened a family council and told her relatives about the situation. They unanimously decided to sound the alarm and go to the police. Joan then called Marjorie and sternly demanded an explanation, threatening to call the police if she refused. Only then did her daughter-in-law admit that her husband had indeed gone missing. According to Marjorie, Jay had returned to Phoenix from Florida but had almost immediately left on another business trip without even celebrating his birthday. He never returned. Now he had stopped making contact, and Marjorie herself allegedly did not know exactly where he had gone. Jay's mother insisted that Marjorie immediately go to the police and report him missing. Marjorie reluctantly agreed. On September 22, she finally called the police and reported that her ex-husband, as it turned out, by that time they were already officially divorced, had disappeared without a trace. The detectives asked Marjorie to provide all possible information about the missing man, the license plate number of his car, documents, etc., in order to put out a search for him. The woman promised to clarify the information and call back, but she never did. The investigators themselves tried repeatedly to contact Marjorie to obtain the necessary information, but again and again she ignored their calls. Eventually, the cops managed to get through to Marjorie. Jay was declared missing and an investigation into the circumstances of his disappearance began. It was then that interesting details began to emerge concerning both Jay and his wife. Despite outward prosperity, not everything in Jay Orbin's life was as cloudless as it seemed at first glance. It turned out that he and Marjorie had actually divorced back in 1998, although they continued to live together as husband and wife. Marjorie claimed that the reasons for the divorce were purely financial, saying that Jay himself had suggested getting a divorce for tax optimization purposes. According to her, this did not affect their relationship at all. They continued to love each other and remained a strong family. Despite the fact that the Orbins continued to live together, Marjorie was not above having affairs on the side. As soon as Jay went away on another business trip, the woman would bring her new lover Larry Weisberg into their shared home. The man didn't just stay as a guest of his girlfriend, he moved into Jay's house for good, placing his belongings in the master's closet. This circumstance looked extremely suspicious. Moreover, Jay's relatives and friends noticed that Marjorie was not at all concerned about her husband's disappearance. She did not take any part in the search for him, was not interested in the progress of the investigation, and did not help the police. It seemed that Jay's sudden disappearance did not sadden her in the least. Instead, Marjorie enjoyed life as if nothing had happened. She spent time with her new lover and eagerly spent money from Jay's business account. In just a few days, the woman blew over $100,000 on all sorts of whims: toys for the child, a luxurious grand piano, gifts for herself and her lover. It appeared that Marjorie denied herself nothing. Marjorie's behavior aroused serious concerns not only among the missing man's relatives, but also the police. The cops obtained a warrant to search the Orbins' home. In the house, they found Jay's credit cards and checkbook, things he always took with him on trips. It was unlikely he would deliberately leave them at home or simply forget them. Analysis of calls from Jay's cell phone and statements from his credit cards confirmed that after returning from Florida, the man had arrived in Phoenix, but his further route could not be established. No new transactions or phone activity were recorded, so it was impossible to track the movements of the missing man. The police suspected that Jay's disappearance was not just an accident, but an intentional murder. And all the evidence pointed to the involvement of his wife Marjorie in the crime. While the search for the missing husband continued and detectives closely watched his wife's suspicious behavior, an unexpected discovery was made. On October 23, 2004, on the outskirts of Phoenix in the desert, a vagrant stumbled upon a container tightly wrapped in a thick layer of black plastic. When the homeless man opened the lid, a human body was found inside. The man immediately reported the terrible find to the police. When law enforcement officers arrived at the scene and examined the contents of the container, a gruesome picture opened up before their eyes. Inside lay the remains of a human body, which was in an advanced stage of decomposition, facilitated by the heat and time. The discovery shocked even seasoned police officers. In addition to the mutilated remains, a bundle of money and a spent bullet were found in the container. And also, the complete absence of internal organs, which someone had carefully cut out. The forensic expert who examined the body concluded that after death it had been stored in a frozen state for some time, and then dismembered with a saw. The expert was unable to establish the exact cause of death. One thing was clear: the killer acted with extreme cold-bloodedness and method. It is noteworthy that not all body parts were found in the container; in particular, the head was missing. Identifying the deceased in such a state of remains proved to be an extremely difficult task. DNA analysis helped to establish the identity, which showed that the victim of the terrible crime was none other than the missing Jay Orbin. Unfortunately, despite all efforts, the investigators were unable to find any direct evidence of Marjorie's involvement in the murder of her husband. The case of Jay's disappearance had to be reclassified as a case of intentional murder. The police's suspicions that Orbin was already dead received tragic confirmation. Marjorie's behavior, who showed no concern for her missing husband and instead carelessly enjoyed life, turned her into the main suspect. The investigation simply had no other likely culprits. Jay had no obvious enemies or ill-wishers. A lot of evidence pointed to the victim's wife being involved in the murder. Meanwhile, Marjorie continued to spend money from Jay's accounts at a cosmic rate, effectively depleting them. Once she was even caught red-handed when paying for a purchase, she forged her husband's signature on a check. As soon as the ex-husband was officially declared dead, Marjorie immediately turned to the insurance company and received almost $1 million under his life insurance policy. Soon, one of Marjorie's close friends contacted the police, claiming that the woman had repeatedly threatened to shoot her ex-husband for money. Allegedly, Marjorie had promised to wrap his body in a blanket and throw it out somewhere in the desert, exactly where the remains of Jay's body were eventually found. A month and a half after the gruesome discovery in the desert, on December 6, 2004, Marjorie Orbin was arrested. The woman was charged with first-degree murder, theft, and fraud. Investigators were convinced that Marjorie had taken the life of her husband Jay on September 8, 2004, the day he returned from a business trip, which coincided with his wife's birthday. Captivated by a new romance, the woman allegedly sought to get rid of Jay forever, but at the same time did not want to lose all the advantages of marriage. Accustomed to a luxurious lifestyle, Marjorie needed her husband's money. But since the couple was officially divorced, she could no longer claim his wealth. So, according to the prosecution, the suspect decided to physically eliminate her ex-husband in order to seize his inheritance and receive a hefty insurance payout as the beneficiary. Prosecutors claimed that Marjorie had waylaid Jay in the garage of their home immediately upon his return and shot her husband. Traces of blood were found at the crime scene. Then, to facilitate the dismemberment of the body, the woman allegedly first froze it, and later thawed it and cut it into pieces using a saw and a jigsaw. Having gotten rid of the body of the husband she was tired of, hiding his remains in a container, Marjorie, the prosecution claimed, carelessly enjoyed life. And the prosecutors had evidence to support this version. Detectives were able to track down that the day after Jay's disappearance, Marjorie purchased a mop, trash bags, and cleaning supplies. Investigators speculated that she had thoroughly cleaned the garage, trying to wash away the traces of blood. And she almost succeeded. Analysis of Jay's credit card charges revealed that 2 days later, Marjorie bought 2 containers at a hardware store. It was in one of these that the remains of her husband were later found. Surveillance camera footage confirmed that the purchase was made by none other than Marjorie. The container in which the mutilated body was found completely matched the one she bought, down to the color and barcode. The prosecution insisted that Marjorie had distributed Jay's remains into 2 containers and hidden them in different places. However, the investigation never managed to find the second hiding place. In addition, it was established that shortly after her husband's disappearance, Marjorie had repainted the floor in the garage, presumably to cover up traces of the crime. At the same time, the woman immersed herself in spending Jay's money and even moved her lover into their family home. It seemed that she was not too worried that someone might reproach her. After all, officially Jay was considered dead. However, Marjorie's suspicious behavior had alarmed investigators from the very beginning. During the trial, the prosecution heard testimony from the defendant's cellmate, who claimed that Marjorie had confessed to her that she had killed her husband, explaining her act by saying that Jay had simply gotten on her nerves. According to this witness, Marjorie described in detail how she shot Jay, froze the body, then thawed it and chopped it into pieces, separating the arms, legs, and head. Having distributed the remains into 2 containers, the woman allegedly got rid of them by hiding them in different places. However, she did not specify exactly where. Also questioned at the trial was Marjorie's new lover, Larry Weisberg, who moved in with her shortly after her husband's disappearance. In exchange for testifying against his former passion, he was offered immunity from prosecution. In other words, regardless of the content of his testimony in court, it could not be used against himself. However, Larry exercised his right not to testify against himself and stated that he had nothing to do with Jay's murder and knew nothing about the circumstances of his death. He claimed Marjorie had told him nothing about it. Despite Larry's silence, Marjorie's lawyer made an attempt to shift the blame onto him. The defense attorney claimed that it was Weisberg who could have killed his rival, having an obvious motive, to eliminate the odd man out in the love triangle and carelessly enjoy life at Jay's expense. And Marjorie, he argued, had nothing to do with it at all. And indeed, as it turned out, the police had at one time conducted searches both at Weisberg's home and at his work. Initially, he too was considered a suspect in the murder. During a search of Larry's house, a remote control for the Orbin family's garage doors was found. At work, police came across an open package of jigsaw blades, 2 of which were missing. The other blades from the set matched the traces of cuts on Jay's body. However, this could not prove Larry's guilt. After all, anyone could have taken the blades, including Marjorie herself. Moreover, Weisberg had an ironclad alibi. When the crime occurred, he was in another city. So Larry officially ceased to be a suspect. The defense insisted that the lover could have used the remote to get into the garage, wait there for Jay to return and shoot him. But the prosecutor refuted this version, reminding the jury about Weisberg's alibi. Despite her obviously suspicious behavior, Marjorie rejected all accusations against her. She gave no further testimony. The trial in the case of Jay Orbin's murder stretched on for long, exhausting months. But in the end, after deliberating, the jury found Marjorie guilty on all counts of first-degree murder, theft, and fraud. The woman was sentenced to life imprisonment for intentional murder. In addition, she was sentenced to 2 5-year terms of imprisonment for theft and fraud. Already after the verdict was announced, Marjorie gave an interview in which she expressed regret that she had refused to testify at the trial. According to her, it was her lover Larry who killed Jay, and she only helped to cover up the crime, because she loved Weisberg. The woman claimed that Larry had allegedly threatened her, so she was afraid to speak out against him. Marjorie insisted that it was Weisberg who had planned the murder, seeking to get rid of the odd man out in their love triangle. Allegedly, that evening a fight broke out between the men in the garage. Jay unexpectedly returned home because of the hurricane, and Larry did not expect him so early. While the rivals were figuring out their relationship, a shot rang out. When Marjorie ran to the noise, she saw Larry over Jay's body. Weisberg allegedly told her that he had shot her husband. According to Marjorie, she never saw Jay's body. Allegedly, Larry took care of everything, so she supposedly has no idea where he disposed of the rest of the parts. However, no one believed the defendant's late revelations. All her appeals were rejected. Currently, Marjorie Orbin is serving a life sentence in an Arizona state prison in Perryville. Custody of the orphan Noah, the son of the deceased Jay, was granted to his brother. Thank you for watching this story. Write your thoughts about it in the comments. Don't miss the future videos, subscribe and like the channel. Take care of yourself and people you love.